My husband filed for divorce over a one-night stand on a ladies' night out. I am traumatized. Hey Reddit, it feels strange to be sharing my story here, but I guess everyone needs an outlet. My name is Morgan, and up until recently I thought I had it all figured out. I was happily married to William for 3 years, and we were living the dream we had built since high school. If someone had told me a few months ago that this would be my life now, I'd have honestly thought that person was lying or joking, LOL. But now my nightmare has become my reality. William and I were high school sweethearts. We met in our junior year, a time when everything seemed possible and love felt like the answer to every question. He was the shy, smart guy in class, and I was the outgoing social butterfly. Somehow we clicked, and before we knew it, we were inseparable. I still remember our first date like it was yesterday. It was a warm spring afternoon, and William had mustered up the courage to ask me out. He was so nervous, stumbling over his words as he invited me to a local diner for milkshakes. I said yes without hesitation, my heart fluttering with excitement. That first date was magical. We sat in a cozy corner booth, sipping on our milkshakes and talking for hours. William was a great listener, and he made me laugh like no one else could. We talked about everything and nothing, sharing our hopes, our dreams, and our fears. As the sun began to set, we reluctantly left the diner, neither of us wanting the night to end. We walked hand in hand through the park, the world around us fading into the background as we lost ourselves in each other's company. It was then, under the starlit sky, that I knew I had found someone special. William and I were eager to spend more time together. We had quickly become each other's best friend and confidant, and our second date was just as memorable as the first. A few days after our first date, William surprised me by showing up at my doorstep with a picnic basket in hand. He had planned a romantic picnic in the park, complete with sandwiches, fruit, and my favorite chocolate chip cookies. It was such a thoughtful gesture, and I couldn't help but smile as we walked to the park hand in hand. We found a secluded spot under a large oak tree and spread out a blanket. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining brightly overhead and a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. We talked and laughed, sharing stories about our childhoods, our dreams for the future, and everything in between. As we sat there enjoying each other's company, I felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. It was at that moment that I knew William was someone special, someone I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. After we finished our picnic, we took a stroll through the park, exploring the winding paths and enjoying the beauty of nature. We came across a pond with a small dock, and William suggested we sit and watch the sunset. It was a perfect end to a perfect day, and as we sat there, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink, I felt grateful to have William by my side. Our second date solidified our bond, and from that day on, we were inseparable. By our third date, I was really starting to fall for William. We had been friends for a while, and I always felt a spark between us, but I never imagined it would turn into something more. As we sat in the cozy little cafe sipping our coffees, William looked at me with those kind eyes of his and asked me to be his girlfriend. I was taken aback, but in the best way possible. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, and I knew that I wanted to be with him too. I said yes, of course, and we spent the rest of the day walking around the city, hand in hand, feeling like we were on top of the world. From that moment on, everything felt different. I felt different. It was like all the pieces of my life were finally falling into place. On our fourth date, William and I decided to try something new and exciting. We both loved the outdoors, so we chose to go on a hike in a nearby national park. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining and a gentle breeze blowing through the trees. As we walked, we chatted about everything under the sun, from our favorite childhood memories to our hopes and dreams for the future. At one point, we stumbled upon a beautiful clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. We sat on a big rock, and William pulled out a simple picnic he had prepared. It was nothing fancy, just sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine. We laughed and talked for hours, enjoying each other's company and the peacefulness of our surroundings. As the sun started to set, we reluctantly headed back to the car, feeling happy and content. It was a day I'll always remember, a day that made me realize how much I cared for William and how special our connection was. Being with William was so easy. He was caring, attentive, and always made me laugh. We shared so many interests and had the same values and goals in life. I felt like I could truly be myself around him, and he accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. As our relationship grew, so did my love for him. I never knew I could care for someone so deeply. Every moment with him was special, whether we were out on a fancy date or just cuddled up on the couch watching movies. He made me feel loved and cherished in a way I had never experienced before. When William proposed to me, I was over the moon. It was the happiest day of my life. I couldn't wait to spend forever with him, building a life and a family together. I knew that with him by my side, I could take on anything life threw at us. We continued to make memories together, exploring new places, trying new things, and falling more in love with each passing day. We supported each other through the ups and downs of high school, celebrating each other's successes and comforting each other in times of need. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Our story took a turn that neither of us could have predicted, and now I find myself here, reminiscing about the days when life was simpler and love was all we needed. Looking back, I can't help but smile at how far we've come. From that first date to now, our love has only grown stronger. William is my rock, my best friend, and my soulmate. I'm so grateful to have him in my life, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. Our love story continued through college. We both attended the same university, studying hard during the week and enjoying each other's company on the weekends. We had plans, big plans. We talked about our future, about getting married, about starting a family. It all seemed so perfect, so certain. After college, we both landed jobs in our respective fields. William found success as a programmer, his skills in high demand in the tech industry. I found a job at a local company, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. We moved into a cozy little apartment, filled it with our dreams and aspirations, and settled into our new life together. Life was good. We were happy, or so I thought. Looking back now, I realized that maybe I was too caught up in my own world to see the cracks forming in our relationship. We still went on date nights, still said I love you every day, but something had changed. Maybe it was the monotony of everyday life, the routine that had crept into our marriage. Maybe it was my own insecurities, my fear of missing out on something more exciting, more passionate. As the years passed, our lives settled into a comfortable routine. We both had demanding jobs, and most of our days were spent working hard and trying to make ends meet. Our evenings were spent together, watching TV or just talking about our day. While I loved William dearly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I began to feel restless, craving excitement and adventure. Our life together had become predictable, and I longed for something more. I wanted to feel alive again, to experience the thrill of the unknown. I tried to shake off these feelings, telling myself that I was being selfish. After all, I had a loving husband, a stable job, and a comfortable life. But the longing persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. I started to withdraw from William, losing interest in our usual activities. I would often find myself lost in thought, daydreaming about a life less ordinary. I knew I had to do something to break free from the monotony, but I wasn't sure what. As the days passed, my thoughts became consumed with fantasies of what it would be like to cheat on William. I knew it was wrong, but the idea of something spontaneous and exciting was too tempting to resist. I even toyed with the idea of suggesting an open relationship, but deep down, I knew William would never agree to such a thing. I yearned for a taste of the forbidden, something to break up the monotony of our day-to-day life. The thought of being with someone else, even just for a moment, filled me with a sense of exhilaration I hadn't felt in years. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help myself. The thrill of the unknown called to me, whispering promises of excitement and passion. I tried to push these thoughts aside, to focus on my marriage and the life I had built with William. But the desire for something more lingered, growing stronger with each passing day. It was a challenging time in my marriage with William. There were moments when I felt tempted to cheat, moments of weakness where I sought validation or excitement outside of our relationship. I even went as far as installing a dating app and going on a few dates, but I never crossed the line into physical intimacy. Fear held me back. Fear of getting caught, fear of hurting William, fear of losing everything we had built together. I remember the anxiety that consumed me, the constant worry that someone would recognize me, or that my actions would somehow find their way back to William. It was a dark period where I felt lost and unsure of myself. I sought solace in the anonymity of new clubs, where I could pretend to be single and flirt with strangers. But when things started to escalate, I always pulled back, paralyzed by fear. I realize now that these actions were a symptom of a deeper issue within myself. I was seeking something outside of our relationship to fill a void. Now I know deep down that nothing can replace what I had with William. As time went on, I found myself growing further and further apart from William. Despite his efforts to spice things up, to inject some excitement into our lives, I couldn't shake the feeling of boredom that had settled over me like a heavy fog. William tried his best. He really did. He planned spontaneous date nights, surprised me with thoughtful gifts, and even suggested we try new things in the bedroom. But no matter what he did, I still felt like something was missing. I knew he was trying to overcompensate, to make up for the fact that I was feeling restless and unsatisfied. But no matter how hard he tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that our life together had become dull and predictable. I really did feel guilty for feeling that way. William was a wonderful husband, kind, loving, and always there for me. But despite his efforts, then I couldn't help but feel like there was something missing in our relationship. As the weeks turned into months, my feelings of boredom and restlessness only grew stronger. I knew deep down that it was my fault. I should have talked to William about how I was feeling, maybe suggested we try therapy or something to spice things up. But I didn't. Instead, I let my feelings fester, allowing them to slowly poison our relationship. I became increasingly distant, lost in my own thoughts and fantasies of what life could be like if things were different. I knew I was being unfair to William. He didn't deserve to be treated this way. He was a good man, a loving husband, and he deserved better than what I was giving him. But I couldn't seem to help myself. I was trapped in a cycle of longing for something more, something exciting and new, while at the same time feeling guilty for wanting it. It was a vicious cycle that I didn't know how to break. Then one day, an opportunity presented itself that would change everything. My co-workers' best friends invited me out for a girls' night out, and I decided to go, hoping it would help lift my spirits. Little did I know that decision would lead me down a path I never could have imagined. I was always a social person, but I hadn't been particularly close to my co-workers until my two best friends, Emily and Jessica, started working at the same company. We had all been friends since college, and their presence at work added a new level of excitement to my days. Work, which had previously been just another mundane part of my routine, now became more enjoyable. As the weekend approached, Emily and Jessica suggested a girls' night out with our other close friends from college and high school. I eagerly agreed, feeling the need for a break from the monotony of my daily life. I hadn't gone out with my friends in a while, and the prospect of a fun night out lifted my spirits. I shared the plan with William, who understood my need for some time away and encouraged me to go and have a good time. When the weekend approached, I was thrilled at the prospect of a night out with my friends. It had been ages since we had done something together. I put more effort into my outfit than usual, wanting to feel special for the occasion. We started our evening with street food, enjoying each other's company and reminiscing about our high school days and about where everyone had ended up. Then we moved on to a local pub, where we indulged in drinks and laughter. As the night progressed, I noticed a man across the room who caught my eye. He was handsome, and there was something intriguing about him. We exchanged smiles, and I felt a rush of excitement. My friends encouraged me to approach him, even though I hesitated at first, knowing I was married. They dismissed my concerns, saying it was just a girls' night out, and that I deserved to have some fun. They also said that there were no rules on a girls' night out. Feeling strengthened by their support, I walked over to him. We struck up a conversation, and he introduced himself as Vincent. He was charming and easy to talk to, and soon we were laughing and enjoying each other's company. Vincent joined our group, and we continued to have a great time together. As the evening wore on and the drinks flowed, we all started getting bolder and bolder. I found myself drawn to Vincent, and we started making out, and in that moment, I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced in a long time. The idea of doing something spontaneous and exciting appealed to me, and I let myself get swept up in the moment. Vincent suggested we go back to his apartment, and without much hesitation, I agreed. My friend cheered me on and encouraged me and even said they would help cover me if needed. I should have known that was a lie. When I look back, I deeply regret the choices I made that night. Under the influence of alcohol, I let my guard down and ended up making a mistake that would change everything. I went back to Vincent's apartment, and in a moment of weakness, I cheated on my husband. We had sex, and for a while, I allowed myself to forget about everything else. We even watched a movie together, and in that moment, it felt like I was single again, with no responsibilities or worries. I was so caught up in the moment that I forgot to send a text to my husband, letting him know I wouldn't be coming home and that I would be staying with a friend. It was a selfish act, driven by the desire for excitement and spontaneity, but one that I would come to deeply regret. The next morning, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. I had done something terribly wrong. I had cheated on my husband. The guilt, disgust, and despair overwhelmed me. I gathered my things and left Vincent's apartment feeling ashamed and broken. As I made my way home, a wave of anxiety washed over me. How could I face my husband after what I had done? When I arrived home, my husband expressed surprise that I hadn't called or texted him the night before, as I had promised. I lied, telling him I had stayed with a friend because I was too drunk to drive. He seemed to buy my story and asked about my night. I lied again, saying it was great and that I had missed him and our friends. The guilt of lying to him weighed heavily on me, but I was too confused and scared to tell him the truth. I felt trapped, unsure whether to confess and risk losing him or keep quiet and hope it would all go away. In the end, I chose to bury the truth, hoping to move on and pretend it never happened. I tried to carry on with life as usual, but the guilt weighed heavily on me, especially when my husband was so loving and kind to me. Returning to work, I noticed my friends acting a bit strange, but I chalked it up to the embarrassing antics of the night before. With everything on my mind, I didn't dwell on it too much. However, as I reflected on my friends' behavior, I began to see red flags. What kind of friends would encourage me to cheat on my husband? I started to question their loyalty and the influence they had on me. The guilt and shame of my actions began to consume me, and I realized that living a lie was very hard. It felt like I was caught between a rock and a hard place. I didn't want to lie to my husband, but I also didn't want to lose him. So I tried to carry on with the guilt, hoping it would eventually fade away. I started being extremely kind to him, trying to overcompensate for my actions. However, it seemed like the more I tried, the more distant he became. No matter how much I tried to be close to him, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was slipping away. I no longer felt that thirst and hunger for spontaneity like I did before. It was as if my life had returned to normal, and the excitement I once craved had dissipated. My friends, who had been so close to me before, now seemed distant, as if they were keeping something from me. Even my husband, who I tried so hard to be close to, was distant. No matter how much I tried to shake things up, to inject some excitement back into my life, he only grew more and more distant. I found myself longing for the days when everything was new and exciting. I missed the thrill of trying something new, of stepping out of my comfort zone. But now, everything felt stale and repetitive. I tried to talk to my friends about it, to recapture some of that old magic, but they didn't seem interested. It was as if they had moved on, leaving me behind. My relationship with my husband suffered the most. We used to be so close, but now there was a distance between us that I couldn't seem to bridge. I tried to be more affectionate, more attentive, but it seemed like nothing I did could bring us back together. He was always busy with work or with his own thoughts, and I felt like I was losing him. I started to question everything. Had I made a mistake? Was I destined to live a life of mediocrity, always longing for something more but never quite reaching it? I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. My life had become a cycle of work, home, sleep, repeat, and I felt trapped in it. I missed my husband. I missed our close bond, but I couldn't figure out what was bothering him. I tried to bury the guilt, to pretend like it never happened, but the truth has a way of coming out. One night, a few weeks ago, my husband surprised me by making a reservation at a restaurant. He said he felt that things had been a little rigid between us lately, and that he thought going out would help us reconnect. I was excited because it had been a while since we had done something like that together. I had work that day, so I told him I would come back from work, and then we could go out for dinner. When I got to work that day, there were some red flags that I should have noticed, but I was too caught up in my routine to pay attention. My friends, who had been distant with me, approached me and started chatting during lunchtime. We talked for a while and they asked me about my husband. I told them he was fine and they seemed surprised. They asked me if we were still together, and I asked them what they meant by that. They said nothing and that they were just genuinely asking. I felt like that was a bit weird, but I didn't think much of it. Work finished up as usual. I clocked off and I went home. We got ready for dinner and then we went out. We got to the restaurant, ordered our food, and it was a little awkward between us at first. But we soon eased into conversation and started talking more freely. We talked about how we had been so busy these past few weeks, and how we had been distant with each other. We talked about a lot of stuff, and then at one point my husband asked me if I had anything to tell him. Looking back now, I realized that was his way of giving me a chance to come clean. But at that moment, I didn't have the courage. I hesitated, then told him no. I didn't have anything to tell him. He seemed okay with that, a little surprised and hurt perhaps, but we continued on with our dinner. We paid the check, left a generous tip, and then started heading home. However, when we got into the car to drive back home, my husband reached into a compartment in the car and brought out some papers. He handed them to me, and when I looked at them, I realized they were divorce papers. My heart sank and I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. I was horrified and my hands started trembling as I stared at the divorce papers in disbelief. Why was this happening? The only explanation that came to mind was the fact that I cheated. But how had he found out? As I looked at my husband, his once cheerful expression was now replaced by a mix of hurt and betrayal. I knew he had discovered my secret. He had found out about my infidelity, and he was crushed. He said he couldn't understand how I could betray him like that, how I could throw away everything we had built together. He explained that he had a video, and my heart sank as he played it on his phone. There, clear as day, was footage of me kissing the stranger from the bar. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My friends had betrayed me. Those same friends who had seemed so supportive and curious about my night out had recorded my indiscretion and sent it to my husband. I then understood why they approached me during lunch. I couldn't comprehend their betrayal. Why would they do this to me? When had they even recorded me? I wasn't so drunk that night as to not be able to pay attention to my surroundings. So how had my friends been able to record me without me knowing? Had I been that distracted?
No.
My husband then, as I confirmed that they had sent it to him that very night, and he had been giving me a chance to confess. He said he waited and gave me time, but I just clamped up and never admitted it. He said he had decided to end our marriage. I felt numb, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. I had destroyed my marriage, hurt the person I loved most in the world, all for a fleeting moment of excitement. My husband said that he was angry, he was betrayed, but that one thing he was not was cruel. He told me that he would give me 10 minutes to get my things out of his house. He said that he had sent a message to my brother before we went out for dinner to come over and help me get my things, and that he had already sent over the video to my parents and siblings and explained everything. He said that my brother would most likely have already been waiting for us at the house, or would arrive in a matter of minutes by the time we would reach the house. It was as if it was all a joke. It was as if everything was just glossing over me. I didn't even know how to react. I cried and begged, but my husband wouldn't even bother listening to me. He just told me to be quiet and let him drive. When we got to the house, he told me that my 10 minutes started now. My brother hadn't arrived yet, so he said he would send a text to my brother to confirm where he was, and that in the meantime I could arrange my stuff and put them out on the porch. He was quite serious about this, and I knew there would be no talking to him now or trying to convince him to not kick me out. On checking my phone, I realized that my parents and even my siblings had all sent me messages ranging from "what the heck" to "I'm very disappointed in you." They were all horrified and disappointed. My parents told me to not even dare bug my husband and to just pack my stuff and come back to the house, that they would help me talk to my husband. That actually made me feel a little relieved. I packed and arranged my stuff on the porch, and in a matter of minutes, my brother was there. My husband didn't even bother coming out. He just shut the door in my face. I had to go back to my parents' house with my brother. Staying at my parents' house was challenging. They tried their best to be supportive, as did my siblings. Despite their anger at what I had done, they encouraged me to give my husband time to calm down, suggesting he might take me back since I had never cheated on him before. Commuting from my parents' house to work became my new routine because my husband hadn't allowed me to take the car when I left his house. He had bought the car, so I understood his decision. Additionally, he had cleared out our joint account, leaving me with practically nothing. While the money was his, this sudden lack of financial independence hit me hard, highlighting how much I depended on him. Unfortunately, bad news spreads faster than good news, and soon everyone at work knew that my husband had kicked me out of the house. It was during this time that I saw the true nature of my so-called friends. They were heartless, mocking my situation with indirect comments, making an already difficult time even more unbearable. About a week after moving back in with my parents, I decided to resign from my job. Before leaving, however, I reported the situation to the Human Resources Office, HRO. I didn't have high hopes that they could intervene, considering the whole thing happened outside of work hours and the comments my friends made were indirect ones, but I felt compelled to speak up before resigning. To my surprise, my boss was understanding of my situation. Instead of the usual 2-week notice, he allowed me to leave immediately. This gesture of empathy was a small comfort during this challenging time. Now, back at my parents' house without a job, I felt a deep sense of sadness and uncertainty. At times, I even feared sinking into depression. My husband had made sure I didn't forget to take the divorce papers, but I refused to sign them. My parents advised me to hold off, as there was a chance my husband might reconsider. Despite his silence, I held on to hope that we could work things out. Seeking a fresh start, I began searching for remote job opportunities. The idea of working from home appealed to me, as I was honestly tired of socializing after the whole betrayal shit my so-called friends pulled on me. If only I hadn't gone out with them that fateful night, perhaps none of this wouldn't have happened. During this time, my mother-in-law reached out to me. She was really disappointed in what I had done, but I was desperate, so I lied to her, saying I was drunk when that happened and wouldn't have cheated if I was sober. She seemed to kind of get it. She said she would help me talk to my husband, which gave me some hope. I thought maybe the pressure from my husband's mom and my parents might make him change his mind. A few weeks later, my parents decided it was time to intervene. My mother-in-law couldn't come, but she said she would message my husband and try to persuade him to forgive me. We went to my husband's house hoping to talk things out. He hadn't been communicating with any of us and had even blocked us, but we were banking on the fact that he was a programmer, and so he majorly worked from home. Thankfully, he was there, and he let us in. He offered us drinks, which seemed like a good sign, but he still didn't want to reconcile. My parents tried to talk to him about forgiveness and how what I did was wrong. He listened, but he made it clear that forgiving me wasn't something he was considering. He said even if he did forgive me, he could never forget what happened, and that it might be better for us to separate. He insisted that the best thing I could do was to sign the divorce papers to make things easier for both of us. He told me that no matter how I felt, cheating was inexcusable, and every action had consequences. I was devastated. I started crying, hoping my tears would move him, but he seemed unmoved. He expressed disappointment that I had involved his mom, saying it made him question his relationship with her. He also pointed out that I wasn't so drunk that I didn't know what I was doing, and he thought it was foolish of me not to notice my friends recording the incident. Before we left, he reiterated that signing the divorce papers would be the best thing for both of us to move on. It was a moment of clarity and like a wake-up call for me, a realization that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had to let William go. I had caused him immense pain, and there was no way to undo the damage I had done. The only path forward was to sign those divorce papers and accept the consequences of my actions. As I was about to leave with my parents, I mustered up the courage to apologize to William. I promised him that I would sign the papers and send them over. His surprise at my sudden change in attitude was palpable, but there was also a sense of relief in his demeanor. He thanked me, and as I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Returning home, I knew I had to come to terms with the reality of the situation. William was not going to take me back, and clinging to false hope would only prolong our pain. I explained to my parents that it was time to let him go, that dragging out the process would only be a waste of everyone's time. William had always been a caring and loving partner, but he could also be incredibly stubborn, especially when it came to matters of principle. I knew that once he had made up his mind, there was no changing it. So I made the decision to sign the divorce papers and deliver them to him myself. Standing on his doorstep, I felt a mix of emotions, regret, sadness, but also a strange sense of acceptance. I handed him the papers, thanked him for everything, and reiterated my apologies. There were no tears, no pleading. I knew it was over and I had to accept it. Now, I wait for the court date, knowing that my chances of a favorable outcome are slim. The video evidence of my infidelity is damning, and my brother, who is a lawyer, has told me that my case is not strong. My brother cannot represent me because conflict of interest and, well, he doesn't really specialize in divorce. But even so, I am grateful that William's terms in the divorce papers are not too harsh. I will not be left with nothing. At this point, all I can do is accept the consequences of my actions and move forward. I have learned a hard lesson, one that will stay with me for the rest of my life. I can only hope that one day I will be able to forgive myself for the pain I have caused. And so here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, hoping that maybe, just maybe, my story can serve as a cautionary tale. Don't take your loved ones for granted. Cherish every moment you have together because you never know when it might be taken away from you.